Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Shila Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Guru Deva, Shila Guru Deva. Jayom Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Sutta Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayom Vishnupad Paramhansa Pariprajakacharya Stotra Sutta Sri Srimad Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Ganga Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samveta Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glory is to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Srila Gurudev. Hare Krishna. So, there's so much to say about Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. Srila Prabhupada said that when a Vaishnava departs, we feel simultaneously happy and sad. We feel happy because we know the Vaishnava has gone to Krishna, but we feel sad because we miss the Vaishnava's association. I have no doubt that Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj has gone to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and Sri Sri Radha Kalachandji by such service as he offered to Srila Prabhupada for so many years. He is naturally engaged in their service. One time when I came to Dallas, I had a very significant talk with him in his bedroom, sitting on the carpet on the floor. And he told me that, people thought that he was such a senior devotee. He had been practicing Krishna consciousness for so many years. He was a direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada and had 3 initiations from Srila Prabhupada: first initiation, second initiation, and sannyasa initiation. And he'd had so much of Srila Prabhupada's association. But what he told me, which was very significant and had a very strong impact on me, was that in spite of his Harinam, Gayatri, and Sannyas initiations from Prabhupada and his association with Prabhupada and his practice of Krishna consciousness, he still felt he needed guidance from other devotees. He said that he took their guidance and he considered some of these guides, whose names he listed, to be his Shiksha gurus. And he named, anyway, that's sort of a detail. So during that period, I had been refused a visa to enter India, where I had served for many years, the first several with Goswami Maharaj. And when I was unable to return to India, I based myself in Mauritius and then gradually divided most of my time between Mauritius and South Africa. So I was pretty isolated from my godbrothers. And historically, at that time in the movement, some of the biggest leaders had fallen down. And I was in such a state of shock that I resolved within my heart that I would never take shelter of anyone else except Srila Prabhupada again. So when Goswami Maharaj spoke to me as he did, I had to consider what he said. I always took what he said very seriously, but at the same time, I had vowed never again to place my faith in anyone except Srila Prabhupada. The next morning, while we were chanting our rounds in the temple, the feeling or realization came in my heart that actually what Goswami Maharaj had said was true. We do need guidance. We do need a Shiksha guru or Shiksha gurus. And it became equally clear that one person who should be my Shiksha guru, or who was meant to be my Shiksha guru, was Goswami Maharaj himself. It was such a clear realization, such a strong realization, that I became very excited and approached him. Now, in those days, the japa period in the Dallas temple was very surcharged. I mean, Goswami Maharaj spent the whole time chanting his japa there, and the temple room was full. So it was really surcharged. And as I recall, at that moment, he was sort of walking in a circular motion around the temple. And so I didn't want to disturb him, but this realization was just overwhelming my heart. So although ordinarily I wouldn't have disturbed him while he was chanting his rounds, I couldn't help myself. I told him that I just had the realization that what he had said was true, that despite all our association with Srila Prabhupada, we still need the guidance of other devotees. And he nodded his head knowingly, as he does, or does, in agreement and approval. Finally, I had realized what he already knew. Then I said, and I've also been inspired with the conclusion that you should be my Shiksha Guru. I don't remember if physically I actually did it, but my mood was to throw myself at his lotus feet and beg him to be my Shiksha Guru. Again, I don't remember exactly what he said, but in effect, he agreed. So I was very happy. I'm going to tell this other thing too. I think it's instructive. It sort of explains my mood in accepting Goswami Maharaj as Shiksha Guru. So some years earlier, during Srila Prabhupada's presence, I had been feeling especially wretched and miserable. And Srila Prabhupada had discussed one verse on a morning walk on Juhu Beach. It comes originally from Stotra Ratna by Yamunacharya, but Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami addressed it to Lord Chaitanya when they met him for the first time. So the verse is Bhavantam evanucharam nirantara prashanta nishesha manoratantara kadaham aikantika nitya kinkara praharshayisyami sanatha jivitam. By serving you constantly, one is freed from all material desires and is completely pacified. When shall I engage as your permanent eternal servant and always feel joyful to have such a perfect master? So Srila Prabhupada elaborated on the word sanatha. Natha means master and sa means with. He had said that the goal of life is to become sanatha, with master, not anatha, without master, or orphan. Anatha is a word that means orphan. Then he had pointed to the dogs on Juhu Beach. The dogs with master, he pointed to one with his cane, which was really stout and strong, just like its master, were confident that I have my master. I have a home, a place to go at night. I will have food. If there's any difficulty, my master will protect me and take care of me. That's how Srila Prabhupada describes the mentality of the dogs with masters. And then he pointed to some stray dogs. And they were skinny and scraggly. And he had said that without masters, they were anatha. Other dogs would bark at them and children would throw stones at them. They didn't know where they would sleep or how they would get food. They were always in anxiety. So our goal of life is to become sanatha, with master, protected. So sometimes, even having been initiated by Srila Prabhupada and having had so much association with him, I felt anatta, like an orphan, especially after some of the leaders whom I had respected so much left. I don't feel that way now, but that's how I felt then. And then I made my resolution. I'm never going to put my faith in anyone except Srila Prabhupada. But after I approached Goswami Maharaj and he accepted me, I felt I was again Sanata. Sanata Jivita. I felt I had my living master. Not that he took the place of Srila Prabhupada, but he helped me in my relationship with Srila Prabhupada, in my service to Srila Prabhupada. He helped me to approach Srila Prabhupada. And that was true then, and it means after I accepted him as my Shiksha Guru in Dallas, and it was true even during Srila Prabhupada's time. As the years passed, I saw Goswami Maharaj in different situations. There was a time when he was staying in an apartment in the lower part of New York, writing one of his dramas. He had entered a new field of service. He was studying Sanskrit drama and writing plays. At the same time, he had even been reading some Western dramas, and he wasn't sure if what he was doing was correct. So he consulted his god brothers. And after that, I noticed that whenever he had an important decision to make, he would always consult his god brothers. And not only god brothers, I remember once in Houston when he was considering what to do about his health. He was consulting us, god brothers, but I remember Yudhishthira Prabhu was also there in that discussion. But whenever he had to make an important decision, he would always consult his god brothers. He had special friends whom he consulted on specific points, but when he had to make a major or difficult decision, he would consult many god brothers. He might consult them individually, but when he had the chance, he would have them all come together, and he would present his thoughts and doubts to them, the different points in favor of and the different points against the idea. And basically, he would accept their conclusion. Srila Prabhupada also said that when the Vaishnavas, the right devotees in the right atmosphere, consider and all agree, we should take their conclusion as Krishna's. So in any case, Goswami Maharaj always consulted his god brothers. He had faith in their association, and he loved their association. And for important decisions, he had faith in the conclusions that would arise from their association. He was a very honest person. He spoke according to his realization, and he acted as he spoke. Goswami Maharaj was an extraordinary person. His insight, his intelligence, and his association with Srila Prabhupada made him uniquely qualified to answer questions and give guidance. It is extremely rare to find someone who is so spiritually attuned and at the same time so astute in worldly matters, so conscious of an individual's mentality and psychology and mood and sincerity. And I mean, he was so qualified. I remember, His Holiness Radhanath Swami introduced this system of counselors at Chopati, and And many yatras have implemented the same system in other places. So maybe Nityananda Prabhu, but someone brought it up to Goswami Maharaj whether they should try to implement something like that in Dallas. And Goswami Maharaj said, no, I want to control everything personally. And he was qualified to do so. Our godbrother Bharadraj Prabhu told me how much Goswami Maharaj had helped him over the years. Bharadraj is an artist, and Srila Prabhupada had engaged him in artistic work, first in painting for the books, and then in learning the art of doll making in Bengal. Later, Bharadraj came to lead the Fate Project, the museum in Los Angeles. He told me of an incident when he was very sick in Calcutta, in the hospital. He was so sick, and the situation seemed so hopeless, that he had almost given up the will to live. Then Goswami Maharaj came and spent 2 hours with him in the hospital. Bharadraj Prabhu's real desire was to preach in Russia. At that time, no one had gone to Russia, and Bharadraj was born in part of the USSR. Goswami Maharaj understood what was in his heart and encouraged him to go to Russia to preach, how important it would be and how good it would be. And just by that talk with Goswami Maharaj, Bharadraj Prabhu developed the will to live again. He felt he had something to live for, and he got better. So now I'll relate an incident from when Goswami Maharaj himself was in the hospital in Bombay. Once he needed an operation, and he had gone to Jaslok Hospital, the best in Bombay at the time. But when Srila Prabhupada heard about it, he wanted to stop the operation, the surgery. So he got into our Jeep, the only vehicle we owned, and rode all the way to central Bombay to the hospital. But when he got there, it was too late. Goswami Maharaj had just come out of the operation theater, and when he opened his eyes and saw Srila Prabhupada, he told him that he had just had a dream. Prabhupada had been giving a report to the previous acharyas about his work on the planet Earth. And he had said that people basically had no spiritual assets, no knowledge, no austerity, practically no good qualities at all. But in the dream, Prabhupada had said that they did have one qualification. Their one qualification is that they have faith in me and they do whatever I say. Then Goswami Maharaj looked up at Srila Prabhupada to see his response, and Srila Prabhupada agreed, yes, it is true. And that reminds me of a little incident when Tamal Krishna Goswami was staying with me here in Carpinteria at my ashram. And we went for a walk at Butterfly Beach, which is is a nice place to walk, favorite place. And he saw a dog in the ocean, and the master was throwing a fairly large stick. I mean, I wouldn't say a log, but it was, you know, a substantial stick into the water. And the dog, you know, would brave the waves and go out and get that stick and bring it back to the master and place it at the master's feet. And then again, the master would throw that wood into the ocean. And again, the dog would brave the waves and get that stick and bring it back to his master's feet. So Goswami Maharaj was commenting on how, you know, how faithful that dog was to its master, and how brave it was, you know, to go out into the waves. It was quite, you know, quite a rough sea that day, and do the master's bidding. And that actually reminded me of Goswami Maharaj himself. You know, he would brave any situation to do what Srila Prabhupada wanted, and then, you know, offer that service at his master's lotus feet. So, coming back to the incident at Jaslok Hospital, actually, we do have no qualification except in Srila Prabhupada as spiritual master. And Goswami Maharaj was the epitome of such faithful and devoted service. In fact, he acted like an extension of Srila Prabhupada. And the way he took care of Srila Prabhupada at the end, the way he rendered such intimate service to him, sometimes it seemed like he could read Prabhupada's mind, which was a great asset for a personal servant. Of course, Goswami Maharaj was so perceptive, he could practically read anyone's mind. But coming back to his intimate service to Srila Prabhupada, someone put together like a collage of audio clips of Srila Prabhupada saying, "Call Tamal. Where's Tamal? Call Tamal. Call Tamal. Call Tamal. Call Tamal. Call Tamal." He would always call for Tamal Krishna Goswami to render some service or to discuss some idea with him. After Srila Prabhupada left, Goswami Maharaj took complete charge of the ceremonies. He made the arrangements for Prabhupada to visit the deities of Vrindavan, the arrangements for Prabhupada to be placed in Samadhi, the arrangements for the festival, and the invitations to the Vaishnavas of Vrindavan, the senior Vaishnavas associated with the different temples and maths. And, you know, one thing that impressed me was how Goswami Maharaj took possession of some of Srila Prabhupada's personal effects and then gave them to individual devotees as Mahaprasad, as remnants of Prabhupada's, to keep Prabhupada near to them, as a remembrance to sustain them in separation. And Goswami Maharaj was so perceptive that he seemed empowered to give just the right item to the specific individual. There's so much I could say, but I think, let me see how much time we have. We have a little time. Okay, I'm going to talk about a very significant talk I had with Goswami Maharaj in Calcutta, which really revolutionized the way I saw Krishna consciousness. So it was in 1971, and it was quite late at night. All the other devotees had gone to take rest. And somehow I ended up meeting Tamal Krishna Goswami on the balcony of the Calcutta temple. And he said something that in a way might seem obvious, but to me at the time, it was quite profound. And he said that the secret of success in spiritual life is serving and pleasing the spiritual master. Now, up until then, I was doing everything. I was attending the morning program, I was chanting my rounds, I was reading Srila Prabhupada's books, I was preaching, I was doing everything. But they were all just part of the program. But after this talk with Goswami Maharaj, everything had a focus. And the focus was Srila Prabhupada. And then all the other things were taken up by me in the mood of service to Srila Prabhupada. Once Goswami Maharaj told me that on the Radha Damodar buses, his great friend, Vishnujan Swami, he had a big photo of Srila Prabhupada's ear. I mean, the side of Srila Prabhupada's face. And he would chant his rounds to the photo of Srila Prabhupada's ear. Like he was chanting to please Srila Prabhupada. So, I guess coming back to our chronology. One thing is that whenever I think of the history of ISKCON, or looking at pictures from the history of ISKCON, Goswami Maharaj was there practically everywhere. It's inconceivable how one person could have done so much to spread Krishna consciousness, to serve Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada. So in December of 1999, I had a major surgery in California, and a year later, Goswami Maharaj came to visit me here. He had planned to stay for 5 full days, but then he said, I've come so close, I think I should visit my mother. And I said, you must. He said, then I'll have to leave early in the morning. On the last day, I won't be able to stay with you. I said, no, you must visit your mother. Now, Goswami Maharaj had been presenting papers at the annual conference of the AAR, the American Academy of Religion. And there he had noticed a professor, Barbara Holdridge. He had been struck and impressed by her and had developed the desire to meet her. At the same time, she had been observing him and hearing him deliver papers. And she had also been impressed and developed the desire to meet him. So on the last day of the conference, they were introduced to each other. He told her that he was going to be visiting Santa Barbara, where she is a scholar and professor of religious studies at the University of California. And she said, all right, when you come to Santa Barbara, please phone me and we'll get together. So he phoned her and arranged for her to come to my place for lunch. And he and I walked down the driveway, a long driveway, to wait for her. She was late to arrive, but Goswami Maharaj said, well, we can walk up and down the driveway and get in a little walk. So we walked up and down the driveway, and eventually she came. And yes, Goswami was quite regular with his walks, as was Srila Prabhupada. I remember once when we were together in Houston, we didn't have all that time, much time, maybe 20 minutes, but he said we should take a walk. He said walking is such a thing that even if you can't get in a full hour or 45 minutes, even if you just walk for 20 minutes, you benefit. So I remember many walks with him. I remember taking a walk with him in Cambridge. And, he was dressed as a sadhu. And anyway, there's too much to say. I can't say everything. But so anyway, so we were walking up and down the driveway at my ashram waiting for Professor Holdridge. And he had meticulously planned the whole meeting. He met her first without me. Then he brought her to the temple room where I was waiting and chanting. She sat down right in front of our deities, Sri Shigandharvika Giridhari, and we discussed Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. Then we all had lunch together, and I thought, wow, when I was at college, we never had professors like her. And I started to see that there was a whole new field in academia. Until then, I had not had any idea what the field was like. My memory of the academy went back to 1969 when I graduated from Brandeis and joined Srila Prabhupada. But Goswami Maharaj had told me that people of our generation who are spiritually inclined either joined spiritual movements, like we did, or went into religious studies. Anyway, she was extraordinary. And of course, Goswami Maharaj was extraordinary. And the discussion between them was wonderful. It really gave me a glimpse into the field. I had heard a lot from Goswami Maharaj about his work in the academic community, but until I met her, I didn't really have a sense of what the field was actually like. And in the end, she stayed for several hours. And afterwards, I was completely enlivened. So I'm telling the story about her sort of as like a grain of rice from the pot of people that Goswami Maharaj touched from all different backgrounds. After Barbara Holdridge left at around 10 that night, I suddenly remembered a letter that Srila Prabhupada had written to me when I first joined in 1969. Quote, I have received one letter from your father, Srila Prabhupada had written. It appears that you are a good scholar and have a taste for psychology and divinity studies. Of course, Krishna consciousness is on the line of divinity. If you make a thorough study of all theological schools and explain Krishna consciousness as the postgraduate presentation of all theological theses, it will be a great accomplishment. As I was reading the letter with Goswami Maharaj, I was thinking of Barbara Holdridge. She had studied all religions. She had gone more deeply into Judaism and Hinduism, and her great work was called Veda and Torah. She said that after going through all the different literatures and all the different traditions, she had become particularly interested in Gaudiya Vaishnavism and planned to make Gaudiya traditions a focus of her research. And yeah, Goswami Maharaj really encouraged her in that direction. So, you know, for some time after Goswami Maharaj introduced me to her, you know, she was working on a research project on holy places in India that featured Vraja. And she had kept in communication with Goswami Maharaj. So again, I mention her. She's like a grain from the pot, because the combination of meeting her and seeing how Goswami Maharaj dealt with her and rereading the letter from Srila Prabhupada all convinced me of the importance of the work in the academic field. And Goswami Maharaj definitely emerged as the leader in the field. He showed that one could be a devotee and at the same time an excellent scholar and author. He published so many articles and collections and established so many deep relationships with people in the academy. Once he sort of chided me, Giriraj, what are you doing? I've already published so many books. What are you doing? But since then, I've also published some books. So when we received news that Goswami Maharaj had left, Barbara Holdridge phoned me. She hadn't had much personal association with Goswami Maharaj. The main times they were together were at my place for lunch and then again at the last AAR conference. But she was deeply moved when she heard of his passing. And she was also concerned about the project she was working on. And although she intimated that she wanted to discuss it with me, she felt reluctant because of my own state after hearing the news. But I got the idea that Goswami Maharaj would want me to discuss it with her. And knowing that I would be leaving for Dallas very shortly thereafter, I said, no, it's all right, we can discuss. And when we began, I felt that Goswami Maharaj was pleased. I felt some presence in the room, a brightness, and actually a blissfulness as we were talking. After the conversation, around 11 that night, I went into the temple room, and I really felt Goswami Maharaj's presence, just as if he were with me. And I felt he was indicating that not only was he currently with me, but now he could be with me always and intimately without being hampered by the trappings of having a body in the world and a role in society. That was very encouraging. So I felt bright and blissful and wonderful. Although since then I have also felt separation. Another phone call, this was just after Goswami left, another phone call came from one of Goswami Maharaj's disciples in Los Angeles, Balaram Prabhu, from the Philippines. Balaram phoned and began asking about what had happened, and he was very controlled. Most of the people who phoned began very controlled, and then somewhere between 3 seconds and 3 minutes later, they would break down and start to cry. Anyway, Balaram went on for 1 or 2 minutes and then said, "I have to tell you about a dream I had the night before Srila Gurudev left." And he began to sob uncontrollably. He wanted to tell me, but it was almost impossible for him to get it out because he was crying so much. He said that Srila Gurudev had come to him the night before, flanked by 2 devotees and saffron, and said, "I have to leave now." In the dream, Balaram became a little angry and asked, "Why? Why do you have to leave?" And Gurudev replied, "I just have to leave now." Then Balaram said that Gurudev told him, "I will always be with you." And then Balaram managed to get out the next few words, quote, "with my God brothers," end quote. At first, I thought that Balaram meant that Srila Gurudev would always be with him and always be with his God brothers too. But Balaram indicated that Gurudev meant that he would always be with Balaram when Balaram was with Gurudev's God brothers, because Gurudev was always with his God brothers. So Balaram said he wanted to come and spend some time with me because I was, quote, the closest. And he also mentioned Giriraj Swami. When I heard Balaram's dream, I thought there was definitely some plan. Then Barbara Holdridge phoned the next morning and said she couldn't sleep the whole night because she was thinking of Tamal Krishna Goswami and felt enlivened by his presence. So we can imagine how much effect Goswami Maharaj has had on people, both during his manifest presence and now. And at this point, of course, I could go on and on, but at this point, I want to speak about a phenomenon of devotees becoming attached to Tamal Krishna Goswami who had never met him. Of course, one famous example is our dear Madan Mohan Mohini Dasi. He never met Srila Gurudev, but became very, very attached to him. Is very attached to him. And another one is a police officer in Mumbai named Nilesh Gopale. And, Nilesh, what to say? Anyway, so I asked Nilesh how he became so attached to Tamal Krishna Goswami. But by email, I asked him. And I thought it would be maybe instructive to read his reply. So, quote, "In 2012, I came across the videos of His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj named Gods, Demigods, and Incarnations, and God's Competitor. In his lecture, Maharaj very boldly and shastrically defeated Satya Sai Baba's follower, This was the first time I saw Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. I was stunned, as for the first time I was seeing a devotee who could speak in this way. The way he cracked all theory and actually challenged the man with a bet. I was stunned. Later, in 2014, a devotee gave me his hard disk, in which I found his 4-lecture series about memories of Srila Prabhupada. Then I got the idea that this man was out of this world. After hearing his 4 lectures, I was fully convinced that I must go ahead and hear more from him. Out of curiosity, I searched for him on the web. I came to know about his death, and I was suddenly crying. Eventually, I came to know about his ashram at Govardhan, his samadhi, his books, his relationship with Srila Prabhupada, and most important for me, TKGTM.com, his tape ministry. And in the in memoriam section, I heard all offerings of devotees when Maharaj left this world. After hearing His Grace Radha Krishna Prabhu's offering, I searched him out on the web and somehow got his contact number. I reached him, and he gave me the contact number and told me to approach Agabit Prabhu. I built a relationship with Agabit, and he was happy to help me. He guides me. And he told me that when I come to Mumbai, I should meet Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. So in the Juhu temple, I met Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. And after he heard me, he immediately took me to a photograph of you, Maharaj, and Srila Prabhupada. We took a selfie there. Agabit Prabhu had already told me about the relationship between you and Srila Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj. I visited both your quarters in the Prabhupada Tower. I felt very good. I am in contact with Madan Mohan Mohini Mataji. She gave me Maharaj's book, photographs, and one small piece of cloth he wore when he passed away. I regularly visit ISKCON Juhu when I get time. I have read all the books of His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, including TKG's diary and the drama of Lord Jagannath. Maharaj, I feel very, very protected with him. He comes in my dreams, not always, but often. My wish is that I may serve you, the devotees of ISKCON, and make my life successful.